So I thought a nice place to begin this evening class is to review the question, why are we doing this anyways? Because I was thinking yesterday was a lot of information, maybe information overload. And what does that have to do with us anyways, all that information? So I'm just stepping back. And how far back do we want to go? We'll just go to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself, who came in this age of Kali to give what no other incarnation has ever given before, Krishna Prema. And he did that primarily through the congregational chanting of the holy name. At the same time, he gave conclusive teachings, Harikatha, that accompany Harikirtan. Harikirtan and Harikatha go together like Radha and Krishna go together. The name Krishna is not different than Krishna. We've all heard that. And Harikatha is also not different than Krishna. Yet the Harikatha portion is the Ananda portion, or the Hladini Shakti portion, or the Radharani portion of the name. The name, so that is Srimad Bhagavatam. We were discussing this during the Memorial Day weekend. There are many verses, multiple verses, where Srimad Bhagavatam is not different than Krishna. Just like the name of Krishna is not different than Krishna, the deity form is not different than Krishna, fully spiritual. So Lord Chaitanya came to give the name, and he gave the teachings. He gave Srimad Bhagavatam, or the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, was imparted by him to principal associates, principally Rupa and Sanatan. So there's extensive sections in Chaitanya Charitamrita that discuss Sanatana Shiksha. And the essence of the teachings to Rupa Goswami were imparted to Rupa Goswami with two benedictions. You'll understand everything, and you'll write everything that I've explained and expand on everything that I've explained. And he had those two empowerments. The Rupa Goswami is one of the main sources where the teachings of Lord Chaitanya were given along with the name. And the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to achieve Krishna Prema that he gave, it's through bhakti. And the science of bhakti is Rupa Goswami's gift to us, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there's a series of 4 verses that are outlining the stages of bhakti as bhakti is imparted and unfolds. And then the whole of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is discussing that topic, which is, it's a big topic. And then the sequel to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is Ujjvala Nilamani, very, very elevated details and details. If you think yesterday was details, whew. Because, in other words, there's a science to it. Like behind things that are very subtle and sophisticated, there's a science. Like we were reading this morning in the Bhagavatam about Bhishma Dev being able to leave his body at will. And Prabhupada, it was explaining, some yogis that have perfected the mystic art, they can also leave their body at will, and they can go wherever they want to go. They don't have to leave their body to go wherever they want to go. They can just go. Zoom, zoom. And so there's subtle sciences within the Vedas, but the most significant and therefore also most subtle is the science of bhakti. So there's a science, and it's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And this book, the topic that we're covering, why we're doing what we're doing, it's the essence. It's a very simplified, short, succinct, but essence of what Lord Chaitanya came to give. Krishna Prema. Through the process of bhakti. So we embarking on the process of discussing the stages of the unfolding of bhakti. From the seed to the mature fruit of the tree of bhakti, or the creeper of bhakti. And thus, this nice poster. And the poster has some details. And you're supposed to all have received a digital version of the poster. You can do with that what you'd like. I'm going to be showing some images from it, but why are we doing this? To help us to receive that which Lord Chaitanya came to give. All we need is the holy name. Yet at the same time, along with the holy name, we know how to best cultivate our relationship with the holy name, our relationship with Krishna, up to the stage of Krishna Prema. So that's why we're doing. And we're on this chapter 4, or the nishta, which is, it's pretty elevated, nishta stage. It's the stage where one's relationship with the process, the bhajana kriya process, has now become steady or fixed. Nishta. So the preliminary, just review. Adau Shraddha, first. Preliminary faith that self-realization is something that I want to achieve. And it's possible to achieve it. Krishna sends sadhus are carrying that wisdom and that empowerment, and through sadhu sangha, one can learn how that seed of bhakti can grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And the method is bhajana kriya. There's bhajana kriya that's unsteady. This evening we're going to see anishtata bhajana kriya. Comes before nishta. Unsteady comes before steady. So there's bhajana kriya, then from bhajana kriya, that very lovely phase, it's like teenage life, anartha vritti, very turbulent. Discovering there's unwanted things inside that I never even knew were there. That's uncomfortable. And then dealing with it by the right method, because we have good instructors. We have sadhus and the teachings of sadhus and the kriya, the activities of sadhus to help us navigate that anartha vritti stage. So that's how far we've gotten. And then we just, at the end, just began touching the next section, which is nishta, to go from unsteady to steady. And here's some of the things that we heard. This is just a little bit of review. But there's a nice verse from Padma Purana that says, in the stage where there's offenses, and we heard there's 4 different sources of unwanted things in the heart, and one of them is offenses. And when there's offenses against the holy name, a person loses all piety. And everything transcendental appears to that person to be mundane. Everything transcendental appears to be mundane for one who has offense. And specifically, nam aparad, because we heard yesterday, other forms of offense. Seva aparad can be addressed very reasonably through proper performance of bhakti. But one makes offense to that, and when we heard, when it says nama kirtan or nam aparad, it includes the other 8, or nama kirtan or nama bhajan includes the other 8. It's just the prominent one is emphasized. That's Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's assist. With the tip of the spear comes the whole spear. The name is the spear, that which pierces, or the sword, that which cuts the knot of material affinity and the implication of material existence. But it's all the processes of bhakti. So, by offense, then piety is, when the opposite happens. By bhakti, even the obstacle, at least the potential is there, that the obstacle of being the enjoyer of piety can be reduced. Anyway, this is now back to what Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur writes in chapter 4. As long as anarthas still persist in the heart, we saw that list of 6 anarthas that are common. The devotee may try as hard as possible to counteract them by devotional activities. However, 5 remaining internal obstacles will linger, undermining his attempts to reach steadiness. So we're trying to go from unsteady to steady, and there's some obstacles. And the results of anarthas are obstacles. And then there are these 5 that are expressed in Madhurya Kadambini. And they linger a little bit longer than the other 6 that were mentioned. And this is prior to attaining nishta. 5 remaining obstacles, they're also removed eventually, gradually. So a sign that one has reached, the bell rings. The sign that one has reached the nishta stage is when these 5 are pretty much gone. So there was a question yesterday that I said we would take up at the beginning. This is the beginning. Maya, or indolence or sleep, the explanation given, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur. Laya is a weakness of sleep when hearing, even more likely than when chanting, and when chanting, more likely is one going to be sleepy when remembering, as opposed to hearing and chanting. And he explains this is the influence of tamagun. So indolence or sleep, drowsiness when engaged in devotional activity. Vikshepa, or distraction. We all know what distraction is. You know what distraction is? I'm looking at you. Don't look at him. I'm looking at you. Do you chant? Do you sometimes get distracted? Yeah, so you know what it is. Vikshepa is talking or thinking about mundane nonsense during devotional activities such as hearing and chanting. Now, it's pretty hard when you're hearing and chanting to talk about something else. It just means intermittent. The mind goes and so the tongue goes. Or even if the mind, if the hearing and chanting is going on, the mind is somewhere else. Hare Krishna, one isn't hearing because the mind is somewhere else. Distraction. We're going to hear from Bhaktivinoda Thakur a little bit more on Vikshepa. So now, the question yesterday was, how are they similar or different? The apratipatti, irresolute or incompetence. And this is what he writes. Although both laya and vikshepa are diminished, or may even be absent, one still feels incapable of dedicating oneself to, or disinterested in, hearing and chanting due to lack of firm motivation. So laya is just sleepy. And apratipatti is even when laya and vikshepa are diminished, I'm just not really dedicated. I'm not motivated. I'm feeling incapable. It's just not me. It's like, so it's not asleep or sleepiness. It's just insufficiently motivated. Not sufficiently dedicated. Little disinterested. Apratipatti. Kasaya. This is when old residual stuff, harsh emotions, speech, anger, frustration, etc., even in the midst of devotional activity, they resurface. Right in the midst of devotional service. Old faults, old material inclinations, greed, arrogance, etc. And it's not like it's all the time there. It's just they're latent and they make surface. Kasaya. And this is the fifth of the five, rasavada. And that's a lingering taste for material enjoyment. Of course, you'll see some charts, but that stays with the living entity right up almost to the bhava stage. Taste for material enjoyment. It's subtle. It means the mind is so attached to sense pleasure, meditating on it, that it's unable to hear and chant with concentration. So we started with tamagun and we're entering with rajagun, and there's a blend of rajagun, tamagun in between. Now, I don't know, I was searching, couldn't find. There must be some scriptural reference for these five terms. I couldn't find it. There must be. He didn't just... Our great acharyas don't just pull things out of the air. There's some scriptural source that indicates where they're making, from which they're making the statement, and I couldn't find it. So it's just, these are the five. And the sequence is as unwanted things, so we've all had the experience. As you're engaging in devotional service, lo and behold, there's lingering subtle things inside that you didn't even know were there because you weren't cleaning. And when you start cleaning, then you see the unclean because you're being attentive to clean. And then you find more, and then you find more. And then, so these are the little more stubborn ones, these five, according to the picture we're given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. they're lingering in a more subtle internal state. This topic, distraction, is a big one. Vikshepa. Vikshepa, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he writes about it in Harinam Chintamani. Harinama Chintamani. The title of the book is The Holy Name Acts Like a Touchstone, and a touchstone can transform something that's ordinary, like base metal, into gold. So the Harinam, the chanting of the holy name, can act to transform ordinary into extraordinary. That's the meaning of the title of the book, and it's the whole process of chanting and its glories. And he writes in chapter 10 of this book that Vikshepa is the essence upon which the other forms of offense, because part of Harinam Chintamani is going through the 10 offenses, just as in Madhurya Kadambini, going through the 10 offenses. 10 offenses are important to know and to avoid, because performing them or committing them implicates one, makes the process of bhakti very, very, very difficult to go forward. So he indicates that this distraction or inattention is the root of all the others. I'll say it again. Inattention, the offense of, because when we recite the 10 offenses, sometimes we say it, and it is also, it's like offense number 11, is to be inattentive while chanting the holy name. So this inattention or distraction is at the root of all of the offenses. So it's a really important one to get on the other side of, distraction or inattention. Here's what he writes. From distraction, all types of inattention are born. This fault resides in attraction for women or men, in the case of women, and wealth, men and money, or women, sex and money. Attraction for material success or victory. Desire for position. And the cheating propensity. This is a short list. There's other things that one may be distracted by. If one has attraction in any of these categories, one will naturally be inattentive to the holy name. So it's under chapter 10. The chapter title is Inattention, and it's one of the offenses against the holy name. And behind this inattention is your attention goes elsewhere. You're distracted. Vikshepa. And a little example is given. Supposing you're chanting and you're distracted from chanting by the favorite distractor. And these days, I see, because I travel, I see people have 2 phones. Sometimes they have 3 phones, and they keep moving between this. I don't know what's going on, but in the airplane, you don't have cell reception anyways. Hare Krishna. Distraction. My advice is, when you're chanting, turn your phone off. At least leave the ringer off. And when you leave your ringer off, when people send you a text message, you don't hear the ping. If you leave it on, then you can hear the ping. So just don't get distracted by that little handheld device, they call it. Vikshepa, distraction. So now we're reviewing a little bit, moving from chapter 3 to chapter 4, anishta to nishta, unsteady to steady. Here's Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur makes reference to 3 verses, Canto 1, Chapter 2, text 17, 18. Let's say it, the verse together. Shrinvatam Sukkata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridyantakstoya Bhadrani Vidhunoti Suritsatam. Important verse. These verses in Canto 1, Chapter 2 are a response that Sutta Goswami is making to the sages of Naimisharanya, who are asking a similar question. Their question is, Sutta, you are the son of Romaharshan Sutta. You know all the Puranic literature inside and out. And, Sutta, you just heard the essence of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam directly spoken by Shukadev to Maharaj Parikshit. You were right there in the audience. And you have the capacity to assimilate it. Sutta, the Vedas are really, really, really vast. Could you kindly just summarize the essence? What's the essence of all the Vedas? And what's the means of realizing it, please? Thank you very much. That's the first question. Chapter 1. And then the answer starts in the beginning of Chapter 2. The essence is devotional service. Vasudeva Bhagavati, Bhakti Yoga Prayojita, etc. So, and then how you perform Vasudeva Bhakti, devotional service unto Krishna. How do you do it? And here's the verse. Prabhupada's translation. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma or Supersoul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Punya Shravana Kirtana. Ridyantaksto Yabat. So the abhadras are cleansed just by sound. That's a nice way. Sound. Of course, the right kind of sound, from the right source, with the right attentiveness. Vidhunoti Surit Satam. From within. So the sound is coming into one's ear, but Krishna's in the heart. And when Krishna sees that eagerness to hear, Krishna from within the heart helps do the heart cleansing, as well as the sound itself. Double action cleanser. The sound and super soul. Then, this is the nishta verse, number 18. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. So the last word, naishtaki, is where the nishta phrase, the same Sanskrit root, dhatu, nishta and naishtaki, same verbal root. And it says the abhadras, same as the previous verse, abhadra, nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, nashta abhadra. Their prayeshu, almost is the qualifier indicating the nishta stage, almost gone. Here's the meaning. This bhakti can take care of everything, but there's a stage where it's not yet completely taken care of, but bhakti becomes so much awakened, and the previous verse, the attraction for the lower modes of nature and the enjoyment from the lower modes of nature becomes sufficiently cleansed that bhakti overwhelms the residual stuff, largely. Now, we heard just a moment ago those 5 residual difficulties, they may surface. Residual tendencies may surface, but largely they don't. And nishta is when they're gone. Or bhakti is now sufficiently strong that they're gone. They don't act. Clear? It's the cleansing and awakening. Two things bhakti does. Cleansing, material. Awakening, spiritual. Awakening of who we really are and the inclination to serve transcendental purposes and transcendental objects, Guru and Krishna and the scripture and the mission and all those nice things, because we see them as they are, as opposed to the covered condition where we don't see them as they are. We see them as material if we're immaterial consciousness. Here's the BBT translation. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, that's Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, that's regularly hearing Bhagavatam class, and besides the book Bhagavat, there's the person Bhagavat, and by rendering service to the pure devotee, those two, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely, that's the prayeshu, almost completely destroyed, nashta prayeshu. And bhaktir bhavati, loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, that's the Uttama Shloka phrase, is established as a revocable fact, naishtaki. So that's the nishta stage. Chapter 2 from Canto 1, verse 18, is this verse, or this stage of bhakti, the nishta stage. Chapter 4, Madhurya Kadambini. This is just an embellishment. Now, this same verse, that little drawing out in the upper right, that means Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he made a commentary on this verse in the Bhagavatam. Naturally, he had the commentary on all the verses of the Bhagavatam. So he writes in this commentary that aparads, or of the four sources of anarthas, aparad source is weakened as one progresses towards the nishta stage. And the weakening continues right up until the bhava stage, which means there's still some residual stuff. It's not squeaky clean yet. It's still nishta. It's nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, but not complete. And that weakening of the aparads, the consequences of making offense, continues right up to the bhava stage. And he also comments that this on the meditation part, the mind concentrating, instead of being distracted, which we all have experience of being distracted while chanting, the tendency to be distracted is changed. It's this nishta stage when it's actually attained, the concentration becomes, the attention becomes very easy and natural, which leads to the ruchi stage. That's the stage after this one. And what his statements in 1 to 18, it's confirmed here. He writes this. Now we're bouncing back to Madhurya Kadambini, chapter 4. Let's say the verse together. Tadara justamo bhava kamalobha dayasyaye cheta aitair anavidham stitham sattve prasidati. So we all know Rajatama, that's the modes of passion, ignorance. And the outcome of Rajatama is kama and lobha. Kama, result of rajas. Lobha, greediness. Prabhupada says this over and over and over and over and over. Lust and greediness. Passion and ignorance. And instead, stitvam sattve. As those become reduced, then sattva, one becomes situated. Stittam sattve prasidati. As soon as irrevocable loving service, that's the nishta stage, irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness. Please note, goodness still has a mix of the lower modes. But goodness is not Shuddha Sattva, but it's Sattva. He becomes completely happy. Sounds pretty inviting. There's some scrubbing to be done in between now and being very happy. His commentary in Madhurya Kadambini. In this verse, the Sanskrit word cha, kamalobhayas cha, yea. So, conveys the presence of passion and ignorance in the heart of the devotee. But in the same verse, the expression cheta ayatara nadvidham, the mind is unaffected by these, establishes that these material modes are not obstacles on the path to devotion, but reside in the heart in a neutral state until the devotee on the platform of steady devotional service attains bhava. This is just saying you're not there yet. The bell didn't ring yet. Just keep going. When the steady stage is reached, that's great. It's not unsteady anymore. It's steady. But you have to get squeaky clean. You have to keep the cleansing going on. Now there's some details that are shown in the chart. This is a blow-up of the chart. Let's do this. Going to use the laser pointer. Here's the 5. We discussed, or at least mentioned these 5. Laya, Vikshepa, Apratipati, Kashaya, and Rasasvada. So those are the lingering, unwanted things in the heart, and that when they are matured, as the bhakti creeper grows and grows and grows, one may reach this nishta stage. The nishta, that little text underneath says the unshakable resolve. There's still other stuff, but resolve is very strong. The apratipati is resolve isn't strong. And nishta is strong. Unshakable strong. That's attaining the nishta stage. So it's something in between unsteady and steady. Apratipati is the cause of unsteady. And then on this side, here's some nice Sanskrit terms we're going to be touching on next. It's all in the chart. The book is just the source of what the chart is from. So there's steadiness in bhakti. That is resting in that which is favorable to bhakti, and then there's steadiness in bhakti that rests in bhakti itself. What's that? Let's find out what that is. 2 types of nishta, or steadiness. Steadiness can be achieved via or through bhakti itself, that's sakshad bhakti. Vartani, steadiness achieved through bhakti itself. Or, stated differently, this first type of nishta directly nourishes spontaneous bhakti. What's spontaneous bhakti anyways? It's spontaneous is beyond the regulative stage. Spontaneous. I mean, one of the examples that Prabhupada gives I like is very practical. Supposing there's a festival coming up. And with the festival that's coming up, the devotees are contemplating way in advance of the festival that's coming up how the deity is going to be dressed, what some special floral arrangements can be made, what kind of this and that and dress and this and that and this and that. I mean, it's part of regulation, but there's a spontaneous nature that when one may come to the spontaneous stage, when steadiness in bhakti is resting upon sakshad bhakti. Sakshad bhakti nourishes spontaneous bhakti. Otherwise, it's obligatory. You do because it's what you're supposed to do. So for those of you that don't know about it, you probably know about it. Coming up sometime soon, there's going to be a seminar given in the Naperville Temple for deity worship. The global deity worship minister has agreed to come. The North American deity worship minister has agreed to come. And, you know, a number of pujaris and people that do worship in their home, etc., that like deity worship, they're going to be discussing deity worship. I don't know the agenda, but I'm sure it's going to help them become fixed in the regulative stage of deity worship. And as it's saying here, it may very well nourish spontaneous deity worship or spontaneous anything, spontaneous bhakti. But that's a stage. Then you have to get beyond the unsteadinesses to get to the steady. Some say it's progressive. First comes steadiness on the body platform, then on the vocal platform, then on the mental platform. Some say there's that progression or sequence. And some others say, no, it differs from different people depending upon the eagerness to serve in a particular capacity, so you can't really say this, then that in sequence. And regardless, bhakti is the driving or propelling force. Bhakti, the essence of bhakti, Krishna is to be pleased. And my happiness is Krishna's happiness, so that's my life in the stage of bhakti. And there's the regulative, and then there's the spontaneous. So steadiness in bhakti itself, then here comes this other one. Steadiness in bhakti may also be achieved with the support of elements favorable to bhakti. So what are some of the elements favorable to bhakti? Giving respect to others. Amanina. Forgiveness. Anukulya. Humility. You can just make a long list. It's just a short list. Mercy. Friendliness. And those good qualities, they give support to bhakti, but there's not the essence of bhakti. It's not sakshat bhakti. They're there for those that are, you know the verse, Yashasti Bhaktir Bhagavat Yakinshana. You know the verse? Sarvayur Ganesh Tatra Samasate Sara Harab Abhakta Shikuto Mahadguna Manoratena Sati Davato Bahi. So it's a nice verse. which says, for those who are devotees, devotees become naturally decorated with good qualities, the good qualities of the demigods. So my bhakti may not yet be steady, but I may be decorated with some qualities that are qualities of the demigods, decorated by, who's the decorator? Krishna is the decorator. He's the source of all good qualities. So he decorates his devotee with good qualities. They may become steady through the assist of those good qualities. Steadiness assisted by or achieved by good qualities. Whereas they may not be fully established in Sakshat Bhakti. But there's the appearance of steadiness. This second type fosters complementary bhakti qualities. So there's a different kind of steadiness. When nishta is achieved by sakshat bhakti, there may be residual traces of some unwanted things. Though remember those unwanted things: arrogance, anger, something. And they may come out because one is strong by sakshat bhakti, and when sakshat bhakti is there, those unwanted things, they're diminished by sakshat bhakti. Anyway, it's a detail. And he concludes this little description by saying, to discern, is the steadiness of this devotee due to sakshat bhakti, or the steadiness of this devotee due to characteristics that are supportive of bhakti? Which type of steadiness is this particular devotee who seems to have achieved steadiness? And his conclusion is, it takes maturity to be able to make that distinction. We'll see something a little bit further. Now, there's a nice reference to this very same verse, the Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu verse, 1-18, that's mentioned in Jiva Goswami's Bhakti Sandarbha. In Bhakti Sandarbha, he references this verse to say that in order to achieve, listen carefully, I'll say it slowly, in order to achieve steadiness by the process of gyan, steadiness by the process of gyan, all impeding features have to be removed for steadiness. It's possible. A jnani can become a perfect jnani, and then perfect jnani, he doesn't waver from gyan. Be fixed in knowledge. But for that steadiness in the path of gyan, all the unwanted things have to be gone, which is not easy. However, his comment in Bhakti Sandarbha is, bhakti is stronger than the gyan process because there will be some residual unwanted things, but they won't be able to act because bhakti is so powerful, they can't act. When the nishta stage is reached. Before the nishta stage is reached, they may act. So there's a symptom of the nishta stages. They don't manifest, although there may be lingering traces. And now we're back to this chart. And on the chart, we see on the far right, there's the body, words, and mind stages of steadiness in Sakshat Bhakti. And on the left side, there's these characteristics of good qualities that a devotee becomes decorated with, that may be the characteristic of steadiness. Now I like this example. Just like a magnifying glass. Have you ever worked with a magnifying glass before? Yeah. Have you ever done, because I did this as a kid, so I'm asking you as from one kid to another kid. You ever use a magnifying glass and get it in the sunshine such that the light that's going from the magnifying glass goes into a little point and it burns a hole in the paper or wood or something? Never done that? Try it sometime. Get a magnifying glass. And if you have to hold it in the right angle, and you have to hold it steady. This is nishta. You have to hold it steady, and then that light gets like focused down to a point, and it burns. It's the same light that's just shining anywhere. But if you take the magnifying glass and hold it at the right angle and keep your hand steady, then the light becomes very, very focused, and it's fire. The light of the sun is fire. We don't feel fire. We feel heat, but we don't feel fire. But the magnifying glass can make it fire. It'll burn. You can burn a hole in paper. You can burn wood. You can burn your hand. You can burn somebody. Don't do it. But the heat is there from the sun, and it can be made focused by a magnifying glass at the right angle. So that's this point. Just as a piece of paper will not burn immediately by intensifying the sun's rays on it through a magnifying glass, but only when it is steadily focused for some time. Similarly, devotion will only alight in our heart if we stay focused on the object of our devotion steadily for some time. It's a very good example. Keep moving your hand around, and it's not going to burn. You have to hold your hand steady. You have to hold it at the right angle. You have to, there's some technical things. But that steadiness is achieved when it's like a magnifying glass. Therefore, to get a taste, which comes after the stage of steadiness, comes ruchi. This is the prelude to ruchi. To get taste in devotion, we must remain attentive and fixed. What's the practice to do that? Now, this is drawn from Patanjali Yoga. Patanjali, chronologically, was way before Lord Chaitanya, way before Rupa Goswami, in writing about Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. But the principles of yoga is what Patanjali was famous for, writing. And the principles of yoga are just universal. It's as old as the Vedas. He wasn't as old as the Vedas. He was a more recent person. But he wrote about Patanjali Yoga Sutras. In the Yoga Sutras, there's a definition of what yoga is and the conditions for yoga. So he mentions these. Nishta, doesn't use the word nishta, he uses another phrase. Fixed or attentive leads to real taste. So, nairantarya is a cultivation without interruption. It can be put as one, but here it's being put as two. Cultivate concentration without interruption. So the anishtata is cultivate concentration and then relax, or get distracted and then try again and then get distracted and unsteady. Jnana tarala, as we heard in the earlier chapter, thick and thin, attentive, inattentive. So, concentration without interruption, nairantarya, with a quality to that concentration, and that's, we can say, bhakti or devotion, but he uses the phrase satkara, It's a confidence that I'm going to get there. I'm going to get to what the goal is. And over a prolonged period of time. Dirgha Kala. Rupa Goswami uses another term, Audinam, sustained over time. That's okay. The different languages are different, but the principle is the same principle. Same as this nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, nityam bhagavata sevaya. Nityam, prolonged period, daily. Dirgha kala, prolonged period of time, every day, every day, every day, every day, every day, every day, a prolonged period of time. With a quality for us is that Krishna should be pleased. That's the bhakti principle. His is not emphasizing, Patanjali is not emphasizing bhakti, he's just describing yoga in general. It's where you do something steadily because you have confidence. It's going to get you to where you want to go. The yogis, like this morning's Bhagavatam class, the yogis that can travel anywhere they want to go. Zoom, zoom. How do they get that? That's a power. They have confidence. They're following some Vedic codes and that they get powers, and off they go, doing things that ordinary people can't do. And then it requires some cultivation. Tapa, concentration without interruption. Nairantarya. So it's the principles from different schools are expressed in different ways, but the principles don't change. This is on the topic of nishta. So some other features of nishta. The I and mine. We heard a little bit about aham and mamata. Yes? So I and mine, this becomes more pervasive, spiritualized. Rajas and tamas, reduced. Slightly present, but they can't act because of bhakti's steady influence. The steady influence of bhakti. And the nishta stage. Meditation is mainly on spiritual, only traces of other topics. And then this other is material attachments, right up until the bhava stage, the clinging to knowing better, but still clinging to material conceptions of things is still present. Here it's saying prominent. Now, I kind of took a slide at the very end and moved it up so you can see it twice. Here's during different stages of bhakti. The stages of bhakti are on the left, from sadhu to shraddha all the way to prema. And it skips one, from sadhu sangha anishtata to nishta. It skips an nartana-vritti. That's okay. From anishtata bhajana kriya, one can get to nishta. So, the spiritual aspect, I just abbreviated because of space, and material aspect. And in this material aspect in the prema stage is completely absent. And the bhava stage is an empty shadow. The material aspect is a trace in the asakti and so forth. That's so material becomes, it's inversely proportionate. Material aspect becomes reduced, and the spiritual aspect becomes increased. Just a different nomenclature. Because at the end of each chapter he says something. This is just an assimilation of all those things that he said. And then so the mind and the attraction of the mind for the personality of Godhead. In anishtata, it's occasionally or momentary. And then nishta, it's reduced. There's a trace of other topics, but it's primarily focused on the spiritual, and then etc. Down to direct association in the prema stage. We'll see this again, so I'm not going to stay on this slide. Now, here's a very simple litmus test. How do you determine, because we heard who's on the platform of nishta? There was how to discern whether it's from sakshat bhakti or the characteristics that are supportive of bhakti. That takes discernment, it takes maturity to understand. But just even that someone is in this stage of nishta or steadiness, see whether they are consistently intense in their endeavor to hear and chant, or if they are slack or intermittent, intense and slack. If they are steady day after day and intense in their effort to be attentive in chanting day after day, hearing and other forms of devotion besides chanting, then anartha nivritti will progress quickly and offenseless chanting will be quickly approached. Such sadhakas are approaching the stage of nishta. And we're almost done. Summary. This is a key thing to capture. Laxity versus intensity of effort. Or there may be more difficulty, less difficulty. That ease in hearing, chanting, and doing other devotional service, they're the criterion for entering into as well as evaluating steadiness in bhakti. So if you don't remember all the details, remember this point. Intensity versus laxity. We mentioned this sometimes, a couple times yesterday, mentioning it again. So it's not fanaticism, it's steadiness, because steady, intense, that's steady is not passion, it's not bursts of enthusiasm and then Gana Tarala. No. It's steady, 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 steady. With faith, when the anarthas that were impeding it previously have been reduced so that steadiness of effort and determination keeps going. With enthusiasm. Rupa Goswami's Utsaha Nishchayad Dharyat. Another way of saying the same thing. To achieve steadiness in bhakti. End of chapter 4. And I think that's where we're going to end. So tomorrow we're going to move on to chapter 5. And chapter 5 deals with attaining taste. So that's where we're going to begin tomorrow. So now we're at the end of chapter 4. Any discussion? Paramakruna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. In that chart that you showed, which had all the 9 stages and the material attachment, it said at the Nishtha stage, the material attachments are still prominent. But also we say that Nashta Prayeshu or Bhadreshu is is the stage of Nishtha. So could you shed some more light on how do we understand these two?
I'd have to go back and see why that's there, because it doesn't make sense. It's not acting, that's for sure, but prominent is different than just not acting. The material aspect. You could say, residual or covered, but not, why prominent. That's a good catch. I'll go back and see where it says that, and if it says that, why it says that, but it doesn't make sense. Yes. I saw him first.
You mentioned vikshepa, the distraction can increase the material desires in the heart. So I wanted to understand if many people have material desires before chanting. So are they further increased because of inattentive chanting?
No. There's a premise to what you said that it caused a pause. Now, for the premise, it's leading to another pause, which is the question itself. The initial statement. Say the initial statement again. That when there's distraction, it increases material desire. But when you have distraction, you move away from that which is going to relieve you of material desire. It's not in and of itself nourishing material desire. It's just not getting freed from the material desire. So you could say you're still stuck in the material energy, so it's expanding the material energy by contact with the material energy. Or material conception of something that's spiritual. That's offense. And that can increase material desire.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Guru Maharaj, I have two questions. One is the two verses which we did, 1 to 17 and 18, Shranvata Swakatha Krishna. In the translation, it said that Krishna removes the desire for sense pleasure. And our part is to hear his messages.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, this is what is our part in that, to do it, and then rest is on Krishna to remove that.
Well, it's two. I mentioned this when I went over the verse. It's a double action cleanser. That is Paramatma from within and the sound vibration from without. But our part, which is what the language that you're using, is you hear with attention, or strive to hear with attention. Hearing, and then qualitatively hear with attention. And it hear with attention can mean different things. Intention can be, I want material stuff. So I'm attentive because I want material stuff, and this is going to give me material stuff, so I'm attentive. But if I want this adau shraddha, if I want self-realization, I want to know who I am beyond stuff, beyond the material covering, and the expectations for happiness through the material covering. So there's variables. All I'm saying here is there's qualitative variables in attentive hearing. But yes, our attentiveness in hearing is our part. And from that, including, is then the service that you do based upon what you've heard. The application of the heart's application and the body and the mind's application, or the word's application of what you've heard. And that's our bhakti process. And then the rest is on Krishna, as you put it.
But I have heard in Madhurya Kadambini, other classes, not from you, that, how can I put it in the words, that Krishna will only help us removing all those anarthas from our heart only if we desire in that direction. If we do not have that desire to get our anarthas removed, then Krishna will not do it.
Well, I'm uncomfortable with that. I mean, I don't know if you're quoting the speaker precisely correctly, That's one thing. But the I don't know about that is, I mean, you've heard me say it 100 times. Here's 101. We're not the International Society for Anartha and Vritti Consciousness. We're the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So the effort that we need to make is to bring our attention to Krishna, not the effort that we need to make is anartha removal. We need to be vigilant about what the anarthas are and the removal of anarthas and not nurturing them, not getting, enthusiastic for anarthas. But that's not where our attention should go. Our attention should go to how to overcome anarthas, how to overcome any, from the different sources that anarthas arise. Focus on the object, not focus on the anarthas. Or I want to get rid of these anarthas. I want to get closer to Krishna. That's the tip of the spear, or the tip of the arrow, the tip of the essence of bhakti. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. Then there's the first part. Anyabhilasha shunyam jnana karma jadavratam. Okay. But how does that happen? It happens by the tip of the arrow. By sakshat bhakti. That's my understanding.
If the person is so attached to their material sense pleasures, what is the best thing? Just pray to Krishna for help?
Take prasadam. Join kirtan. And then, how many persons did Prabhupada rescue from the pit of sense gratification? Just from the joy of being with Prabhupada and being in kirtan with Prabhupada and serving Prabhupada's mission. They left all that nutty stuff. His audience was very unfortunate people. So, but they were made fortunate. So, lingering attachment, material attachment, yes, one has to let go, and to let go, there has to be willingness to let go. But my comment on that particular point is, you can let go and then take it again.
Yeah.
Unless you have that shelter. It's going to happen. The bungee cord effect is going to happen. It's going to go back to where it was. It's not steady. Now, I'm remembering your question. The question is, starting point of this discussion is, you heard from someone saying that unless we actually desire to overcome the anarthas, we're not going to overcome the anarthas. And I'm saying, I'm not comfortable with that. I may not even know what all the stuff. And I want to come before Krishna and Krishna smiles. That much I know. And I'm not fit. That much I also know. But Krishna is very kind, so I'm going to go towards Krishna anyways. In ways that are enjoined as a practicing sadhaka to do. So it's important to know the do-nots, and to do the do's and not do the do-nots. But the essence is bhakti, that Krishna should be pleased. That takes care of it. That's my understanding. I may be oversimplistic. That's my understanding.
One more question. Rasa Swada, the fifth obstacle.
Yeah.
I am remembering a verse from 11th canto, which we have discussed many times, Uddhava Gita, where Krishna says, Bhakti is for people who are too attached or not too detached. So what I would like to know is, what are the examples of not too attached? Does that include little bit of sense pleasure, or what are the examples that will fit into that category?
Well, that's an example. I mean, household life, regulated sense pleasure. Welcome. Under the house of bhakti. And then not too much and not too little. Not, okay, now I'm a householder and I'm chanting Hare Krishna so I can indulge. So that's not the right understanding. Regulated with the intention that it becomes minimized or at least reduced. Not forever, but progressing towards a goal. Krishna alone is my goal. All right?
Thank you.
So the entry point can be in a spectrum, can be in a whole range of way over here and way over there and somewhere in between. It's defining the goal and taking the means to reach the goal in a regulated way. If sense indulgence is something that's, I feel, is a need. I mean, it was one place I was recently, they were talking about having a car as a need. It's a way of life. It's not saying don't get a car, but a need. Anyway, you have something.
I just want to add a little bit, Maharaj.
I thought so.
So, just to that specific verse in the Sri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Sri Rupa Goswami mentions that not too attached and not too attached is just the adhikar or the entry criteria for entering into sadhana bhakti.
Yeah.
And he says that very soon that doesn't mean that one should stay attached to sense gratification or stay detached from objects of sense gratification till the very end. And that, so just wanted to add that.
Okay.
That's the entry criteria, not, it should be, both should be given up.
No, she's not, she agrees with you. She didn't say that either. But it's a nice, the scriptural reference is nice. Over here.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Being a physicist, I understood two examples. So this is just my comment and then there'll be a question. One is that if light would be bright, then you can see the dirt.
Yeah.
So our aim should be to get the light brighter so that we can see what needs to be removed. Second thing is the steadiness. Unless you are steady, holding that magnifying glass, you won't get the effect that bhakti. You won't reach to the stage where you want to be. So that steadiness is needed. So coming to my question is this. You just referred Harinam Chintamani, chapter 10.
10, yeah.
In chapter 10, there is a statement saying that unless you have Shraddha in Harinam, one should not be initiated into chanting, which I thought it's like catch-22, because if I meet someone who's getting onto this path, I would say start chanting. You would get there. So what do you say?
I don't see the problem. What is Shraddha? It can be preliminary.
Yeah.
But so when initiated without a preliminary faith in the process, what's the meaning of that initiation? It's a show. It's
but if you start chanting, you probably get the taste of Harinam. And
but
then
taste is different than Shraddha.
Okay.
Faith, Shraddha is just preliminary.
So that has to be there before you.
He can't even do it unless. So what to speak of a maturing stage without some faith?
Okay.
That's all that's being said.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
Don't read into it more than that.
Thank you.
It's not. But here's another statement. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur expresses in Madhurya Kadambini that bhakti begins with Shraddha, and all the other 8 stages are simply stages of Shraddha. They go by different names, and the different names are manifesting symptoms and characteristics, but it's faith up to the stage of prema. That's one of the ways, one lens to look at the 9 stages of bhakti. It's faith in maturing it, the seed, and then the maturing of the seed.
So Shraddha is the seed.
Yeah.
It's just okay.
Or it's one of the ways of thinking of the seed of of bhakti. There's other ways of thinking of the seed of bhakti. Yes. It's a nice topic, isn't it?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So in Apratipatti, it was said, a line was written, it like lack of motivation. I wanted to get your input a little more on that. When one is not motivated to do it in spite of, let's say, having this pile of knowledge and understanding, various things can be said. Does it mean that, let's say about myself, does it mean that the faith is not solid, I'm not all in?
Yeah.
Is that the primary reason behind the lack of motivation?
Yes. Well, that's one way of saying it. We're all carrying some conceptions. That's what the mind, one of the things the mind does. It carries conceptions of life. And there's a whole big bag of conceptions that for this lifetime and previous lifetimes bouncing around in the mind. So we're all carrying some conceptions. And we may linger and hold on to a conception. I mean, you may find it by introspection, or you may find it by discussing with somebody, to say a newer person, and they keep wanting to go back to that conception. They want to somehow preserve it, maintain it, sustain it, because it's conception that they're carrying. So it's not like change it out, please. It's just, it's a purification. A more mature stage of conception X can very well be the bhakti conception. It's just more complete. Am I touching on your question? Not exactly. Say it again. It's refined after hearing what I just said.
I think, let's say, if one is not motivated enough, what is the primary root cause one should tackle? Or we should just go ahead and do it, just keep doing it. But then it goes back that if you're saying someone...
But that's not determination. That's beginning, but determination requires the right conception. That was what I was trying to address. Because otherwise, my determination isn't strong because I'm still lingering with one foot in this boat and one foot in that boat. The prior conception boat and the present conception boat, or the new conception, the bhakti conception. And I've got a tendency to the old one. I'm not really fixed yet. So this is intelligence guiding the mind. Spiritual intelligence has the power to guide the mind. But determination requires very strong intelligence, spiritual intelligence. Otherwise, it's mushy. And sometimes not very firm and fixed, irresolute.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. So it was said, distraction leads to material attachment, increase in material attachment. Sometimes the distraction is not because of external devices.
Sometimes what?
The distraction is not because of external devices like cell phones or TV.
Yeah.
It's something that might have happened at your workplace.
Of course.
And those things, no matter how much we try to avoid, it's not possible. So how do we, in those cases of distractions, will that still lead to increase in material attachments? Or if so, how do we handle that?
the process of bhakti starts with faith and gets nourishment through sadhu sangha and in association with sadhus, bhajana kriya, and that's how we can overcome what you just described. And it's not, but gradually, the two things, the purification and the awakening. When the true self, when my sense, it's Brahmabhuta prasadatma nasojati nakangsati samaksarveshu madbhaktim labate param. That verse is saying the same thing. That just when through the process, I may be engaging in sadhana, but madbhaktim labate param, that means, bhakti in a more mature stage. Bhakti in a more mature stage becomes awakened when I'm so fixed that I'm neither hankering nor lamenting. And other people are what other people are. There's not just people, it's other living entities. Samaksarveshu. So by awakening a bhakti, what to do when there's some internal distraction is your question. Stay with it. Stay with the bhakti process, because of faith, it's going to take me to the place I want to go. So that has to do with this conception and determination. It's going to get me to where I want to go. And I'm not there yet. I'm still disturbed by the distraction that's something. Somebody said something, something did something, something happened, calamity, something. And it's, my mind just keeps going there. As much as I don't want so what to do is so you follow the bhakti process. So you may need to step back, take 10 deep breaths, like pause out of that distraction space. And now, that's kind of why I started the class the way I started the class. Why are we doing this anyways? What am I to do when I'm finding myself really just distracted by something, a hurt or an unfulfilled desire, frustration because of an unfulfilled desire, something, and it just keeps coming back, something. Shraddha, sadhu sangha. So I for a while when people would ask how-to questions, they just give a 2-word answer: sadhu sangha. And then you unpack that, and it's the bhakti process done with faith, and then an artha-nivritti. The distraction stuff can be best addressed when bhakti bhajana kriya, although it may be anishtata, bhajana kriya is still performed in sadhu association, can help you get beyond that internal distraction thing. It may take a while. And that was one of the topics yesterday. You'll remember the tree, and it takes a while for the tree to bear fruit, but be patient, and in time it'll bear fruit. Once upon a time, I was a little kid. And when I was a little kid, my father was an outdoorsy type person. So one day, one summer, around this time of year, they bought a peach tree. They planted a peach tree in the backyard. So I remember looking at the peach tree. Where are the peaches? Be patient. Next year. No peaches. Where are the peaches? Be patient. Next year. The little green things. But they didn't mature into peaches. It took 4 years. Then there were nice peaches. Patience. Where's the peach tree? And it'll bear fruit. It may take some time. Okay. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, in the 5 obstacles, is there a hierarchy or a order in tackling them, or it can be worked on parallelly?
I don't recall any commentary on is there a sequence or a priority or something like chronology. I don't recall. What it makes sense to me is the tamagun will go more quickly, and the rajagun, this rasavada, which we're hearing, it taste for material enjoyment lingers right up until the bhava stage. That gives a hint about sequence or chronology, but from commentary, I don't recall reading anything explicitly. Okay, we're done. Srila Prabhupada ki, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur ki, Gaura Premanandi.